Hi, this is Laurie Laizure, and this is To the Trade. Hi, how are you going? And we have Niall Johnson with
Hi.
us.
Hi.
And of course, our guest today, it's Heather Randell. She is a bookkeeper to the interior designers that you would want to know. So she knows pretty much everything about finances. And we thought it would be so fun to talk to her and pick her brain about, anything to do with financials for interior designers. Heather, you're in the hot seat.
Hi. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So, how long have you been doing this, by the way? You've been a bookkeeper for designers for a long time in this industry
Ye-
specifically.
Yeah, I've been in this industry for almost 25 years, as a director of operations, and then probably for the last almost 20 years, maybe 18 years, I've been doing freelance bookkeeping and operations for design firms, all over the country. Now I think especially after COVID, it's a different world and everyone is, I personally get to spread out more. Before everyone was just looking to have someone in their office, and I used to go to different offices every day. But now I mostly work from home. I sometimes go to my offices. It depends on what it is. I have, a regular that I see every week, but other than that, it's mostly remote, and that's how we work now, and it works just fine. We can communicate and get all the information, and it works out just fine.
Yeah, I would think it's sort of easier to, and it opens up, you know, the arena for designers who might not be located close to you too, because you want someone sometimes in this industry who understands the industry specifically,
I
and
mean, I always say
many of
that
them.
I
So
always say that it's so nuanced. People don't realize what goes into these projects and how it's, 15% design and 85% administrative work. And,
Mhm.
you know, I wish people knew that, especially clients, because they sort of
Mhm.
come in thinking it's a breeze and everything's so easy, for the designers, and it's not. And there's a lot of back end work that goes into this that we all do, to make it happen and to make interior design firms run.
yeah,
So, but as far as the other thing I just wanted to mention was that there are a lot of designers that are newer. They don't need a full-time, bookkeeper, or there are other, positions that people just don't need someone full-time, but they need someone skilled. So it works out for everyone to be able to have it this way.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that most designers maybe could use that kind of advice too that you offer, because I know you comment a lot on our Instagram, and people are super responsive because you're giving financial advice, you're giving pricing advice sometimes, and just even the confidence aspect of like, am I doing the right thing? Am I,
Yeah,
you
confidence
know?
is everything. I think, that's where with any business, if you don't believe in yourself, no one will believe in you. And you have to have confidence. I think that, what I do is I help designers sleep at night. And then they also, because they know what's going on in their business, they have the confidence with their clients to be a certain way. I think that you have to get comfortable talking about money,
Well,
and you're running a business.
yeah.
This is not a hobby, it's a business. And if you don't feel comfortable talking about it, you're never going to get to the place that you want to get to.
How long do you
So,
think it takes for let's just think, pick a designer in your head. You don't have to say who it is,
sure.
obviously, but that you've worked with. And from the very beginning, how long does it take for them to get comfortable having those conversations? Is it something that takes time to develop
I
that?
th- I do think it's something that takes time. I think a lot of new designers are afraid of their clients, right? They have a lot of these clients, they're in finance, they're lawyers, and they're asking all of these questions that, maybe even if they can answer them, they just feel uncomfortable being in that spot. So I think that all of all of my designers are pretty comfortable with things, but everyone works a different way. So I am the person that communicates with clients a lot when it comes to their invoices. Sometimes it's my designer. Sometimes it comes straight from them. I'll send them an invoice. They'll send it to it depends on
Sure.
how it goes. Or it comes straight from our software and it'll say, from team XYZ, whatever it is. Or sometimes it's from me. It really varies and everyone has a preference. I always say I have, the same job mostly for most designers, and it is different for every single one. It's a whole different
Right.
job
Is
for
that because of
everyone.
pricing, or is that the
No,
whole
I
thing
think
is
it's
different?
it's a combination of personalities. It's a combination of that plus, yeah, of course, how people bill. It's obviously if someone is billing hourly, it's different than if we're just doing a flat fee up front and then billing, some version of markup on merchandise. But it depends. And so, like I said, with hourly, that takes me some time to be entering that in and billing it out. And if someone doesn't have that, that's a piece of my job that doesn't exist.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So it really depends. I mean, but it depends. I think it's also, I have some of my designers will enter in, for example, their credit card charges right into the software, which is a big help to me and reduces my time. But some people don't want to do that and they don't have to. I'll do that for them.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
how it operates. So, it depends. Everything takes different amounts of time for different designers.
Sure. Sure. What do you think are the most common financial mistakes that you see, not maybe even with directly with your clients, maybe you see it in the community in general, making? What are the mistakes that you're seeing designers make?
I think that sort of willy-nilly markup is one thing. I think it needs to be really clear in your contract how you're marking up. I think, you know, while there's some aspect of it that is, you're running a business and you should call the shots on these things, you still, you're dealing with, $1 million jobs, right? And they're the people who are spending that money, they don't want to hear things like, you know, MSRP or reasonable retail. They just don't. And so, yes, you certainly have the right to do that. But I do think that if it comes down to an audit, which can happen and will when you have a client that is unhappy, no matter what your contract says, there's going to be an audit. And if you don't feel comfortable saying, oh, I marked this up, this much, then you shouldn't do that.
Right. Yeah.
If you don't feel comfortable, if you think that if someone, I think in the back of your mind, if you feel uncomfortable with that, then you know that it's not right to do.
Right. I see sometimes just from the questions coming in and the questions that sometimes don't even make it to the questions we
Yes.
post. There's a lot of that. We see a lot of people who, it's that constantly getting shopped. They'll find, a sofa and they have marked it up, whatever they've marked it up, and then it's cheaper at, Wayfair or
That's
whatever
where the
online.
confidence comes in. That's when
Yeah.
you tell clients, this is a service, right? And this is how I work. This is my business model. We're not here to
Nickel
be
and dime.
haggling.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
you could spend if we were going to spend all day trying to find the absolute cheapest, version of this, I mean, we shop at, trade sources mostly. There will be times where you'll get a crate and barrel thing here and there, that happens too. And you still have to be specific in your contract about how you're marking that up, even in that scenario. And as
Sure.
far as I'm concerned, they still spend their, designers are still spending their time doing that
Yeah.
and shopping and
And they should
sourcing.
never feel guilty about it because they're, spending the money to go to High Point. They're sitting on the furniture. They are dealing with the brand. They're dealing with the return.
There's
The
a lot that goes
liability of it
into it.
alone, there needs to be a markup. I mean, some
Correct.
things will be more expensive and some things will be less, but
Always.
be firm. I think they should do it right on the contract. Niall, do you do that? Do you do that like right in the when you're going over the contract, you're starting with a client,
Mhm.
day one, do you go over, this is how my business this is how I make money, like
Hmm.
this is
Hmm.
where, there is a markup on furniture, there is a design fee, there is a project management fee, these are separate buckets, but it all takes all of this because all of this is expensive to run,
Yeah,
and
yeah. We explain it from by phase. So like this is the design fee, and then this is what project management will cost you, but project management is a percentage of your fee. And so if you go over X amount of dollars, and there's like a range for project management. So at the end, like say you were getting super happy with the budget and you spent 150,000 versus 100,000, then that takes you into a different range for project management. So we're going to bill you for that. And then installation is billed at a daily rate of X amount of dollars per day, right? And then we mark up, but we don't say what the percentage is that we mark up. We just say that we share our, and we don't even use the term markup. We just say that we share our trade pricing with you, and this is how we split it. And the reason I say that to clients is because if something happens where there is a better deal for them, it's more advantageous, then I like to be on the receiving end of the surprise, right? It's like, oh, I told you that we share it with you this way, but guess what? We were able to get this really great, like I'm doing it right now. We were able to get this really great chandelier from Arteriors that you would never have been able to get for your
Yes.
budget. And now it's been marked down from like $4,000 to $500, and now you can get it. And so it's like, oh my God, they're like super happy. But I don't say to them, this is the percentage that we discount things at, because honestly, there's no set percentage for us. Some places give us, it's at a third, and some places it's like you're getting 15%,
right,
15% off.
yeah,
So we just say we share it with you, and this is the split. This is the percentage of the split that you get, but not the percentage that the markup is, because that varies, you know.
See, and maybe, and if I'm understanding you correctly, if you were audited on a project and someone was looking at your vendor invoices, then they could say, oh, here's how much you paid, and this is exactly what happened. There's an equation that someone can go back to, and they know
yeah,
that that's what's happening. Plus, you're giving clients proposals, right? It's not like,
Yeah.
I think people get this idea that designers just sort of go and buy everything. You are scheming and you're giving a proposal for every single item that a
Yep.
client is getting. They know how much things are going to cost when they receive their proposal. Then when they pay you, which I advise all of my designers, and they all do this, we get 100% upfront. There are no returns. This is most of it, not most of it, a lot of it is custom. And when it's not custom, we'll make a note in the contract that says, in the event that, for, we don't even like to do this, but even if you say we will attempt to get a refund, and that usually has a restocking fee,
Yep.
if they even allow it, which they usually do not.
Don't. Yep.
So whatever the wording is, it says, in some of the contracts, some don't say that at all, because if you pay for it, you approve it. And then I had mentioned this to you when we were talking, that, we put on a memo on every proposal that pretty much says your payment of this proposal is approval of every item. And
Yeah.
so they approve it, they pay for it, and that is the time that we generate all the purchase orders. That's the process. And that's, for everyone needs to have the same process that they go through every time. If you don't have the same process, you're going to be lost and you're going to lose money. So, get paid for your proposals, generate your POs, pay your POs, and then you get into your whole, tracking and all of that. But, getting back to the markup, you know, I'm a big fan of Designer Net, because you, as a designer, should be able to take advantage of all of the relationships that you've made over all of these years. So if you are getting a stocking dealer price, then you should be able to keep that amount between stocking dealer and regular trade, where another designer, maybe who just started out, is getting trade, and then they can
Yeah.
mark that up. So we
yeah,
like to say designer net plus whatever the percentage is.
yeah, yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
How do you think the designers could do better managing their cash flow?
I think so. It's, you know, again, everybody is different. I mean, there are designers, for example, that some designers charge not one single personal thing on a company credit card. There are others where there's tons of personal charges, and those will go into their, you know, their draw. Um, but, you know, that's one thing. I think people sort of, even though it's their business, maybe sometimes look at it like it's not real money. I know it sounds silly, but it's like it's not their money, but it is. And so sometimes people, you know, might behave that way. I think that cash flow is directly related to what I just mentioned. If you are always keeping the same process, if you are collecting all the money upfront from your client and then you're making your purchases, you know exactly what your profit is on those. If you feel that you're not comfortable with understanding where your money is, do something as simple as getting another bank account and putting your profit in there. If you don't feel comfortable holding on to your sales tax money because you have to pay it next month or next quarter, however you're set up to pay, you should go take that money when you get your proposal, you know, the money for your proposals, take the sales tax money and move it over, because cash flow is a daily, it changes daily, right? So you could constantly be looking at all of your reports, like your, you know, your work in process and your open purchase orders and all of this stuff, but you still, it's almost just, if you want to keep it really simple, do that. You know, some of my designers do that, some don't. But if you feel that it would make you more comfortable to do that, then you should absolutely do it. And if that's what makes you sleep at night, and then you don't have to be generating reports every time you have something, do it that way. Make it, I just try and make it easy for everyone. Everything, my goal is to make it easy on everyone. I try and do, you know, as much of my work as I can without bothering you guys. You know, that's what I do. And I was telling somebody that I had, and I've done this at different firms. I have email passwords so that I can just log into someone's email, search the amount that I know just came through on the Amex that I can't find, or I can't match it up with a PO. Again, we have a process for coding Amex bills, but you know, there's always situations where things change or whatever it is. I need the backup. I need to know that the vendor didn't charge a sales tax. You know, I know I've been doing this long enough where if a freight charge, if the difference between the merchandise and, you know, whatever I either had as the freight or no freight at all on the PO, once I get the charge, I know if it's too much. And I'm like, oh, I bet they charged a sales tax for some reason. Vendors just do it by accident. They don't have your resale certificate, whatever it is. So you know, I need to get a copy of that so that I can make sure that the client gets billed for the freight and that we're not being charged for something that we're not supposed to be.
Right. Yeah. That's really that.
Can
I
I,
bet that saves your clients so much. Like, are you, Niall, would that be helpful for you or?
yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I don't even want to gloss over that because it's kind of genius what you just said, because you're like saying that, like, you know, figure out for the designer what really works for you, you know, like be consistent in how you work, but in the beginning figure out like what really, like, think about the money because you have to, it's a daily
Yes.
thing, and figure out like how to get comfortable around that and what will truly work for you. Don't do it my way, like don't do it the way that I would do it if I was a designer,
Yeah.
but do it the way that would really work for you, and then stick with that, and I will work with you in support you in that. And I think that's genius because, you know, I remember, I'm going to tell the story again, Laura, you've heard it a million times.
I
I
love it.
remember when I remember when I first started and I got a bookkeeper and I was super happy. And I said the same, I was like, you know, the way my mind works, I need separation. I need, you know, different bank accounts. I am not going to be good with everything going into one bank account. And this bookkeeper said to me, that would drive me insane. That's overkill. You don't need that. So I didn't do it. Fast forward, I don't know, 8 years later, I think it was the very first time I heard it was the designer CPA. I was reading like some literature from him, and it literally said that. And then I had talked to somebody else maybe about 6, 7 months ago who said the same thing. And now here you are saying the same thing. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, that was what my gut said that I needed to be comfortable. And this bookkeeper told me, no, don't do that. Don't do
Yeah.
that. And so I think like what you said is super important. Do what you feel is comfortable for you to operate and, have that conversation about your money and then, grow from there. That's
Yeah.
genius.
I
Yeah.
think that's I try and be fair, and I want, like, the person that said that to you, to me, that sounds like, that might drive them crazy. Why? Because they have to do another bank reconciliation. But is it that hard? It's a transfer. It's not an account that you, like your regular checking account with your,
Yeah.
purchase order payments and operating expenses and all of these things coming out. It's one account. It does not take a long time. And I don't really, again, I don't think that's fair to you. If you need to operate your business like that, I'm part of that support team. I should do what makes you feel comfortable. And if you're asking me to do that, I'm absolutely going to do that for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what a relief for your clients, I'm sure.
I'm telling you. Yeah. Yeah.
But then there's
What,
the process,
right.
the processes of how we work, right, and how we bill. And so, you getting back to the cash flow thing, you have to be billing, expenses to your clients, depending on, again, how you work. Some people bill hourly, some don't. Some, we'll just be billing expenses out, freight charges and whatnot. I, you know, I I feel like one of these things that's a big question for people is this whole freight charge thing. And I don't know why, because I just get whatever freight bills we get in are entered into the software, and then I'm tagging them all on the monthly invoice, and then they're getting billed. That's how we do it.
Right.
So it's not that difficult. I don't know. I think also people are worried that their clients will be upset about how much receiving is. And I think that's another conversation that they need to have, and part of their contract. I made a whole paragraph on, that goes into the contract about using a receiving warehouse, because we're not sending furniture to your house one by one. And we're not, when you have work that's getting done in there, we don't want damages. And, you will have to be responsible for the damage if that goes to your house. Plus, we don't want them seeing every single piece before the whole,
Well, it's dirty
room is put
too.
together.
It's a
Yeah. Yeah.
construction zone. It's dirty. You don't want
Yeah.
to have
They pick it apart. Yeah. It's a whole mess.
it's a
Yeah.
But
whole
if
mess.
someone
Or they
sees
hate
one,
something because they're seeing one thing.
Yep.
correct, they need to see
Yep.
the entire space put together. And if they don't, it's always a disaster. It's always a disaster. They need to see it put together with all the finishing touches and the accessories and everything. You can't just, have one by one. And it really, again, it just takes up so much time. They don't realize how much time these things take.
Yeah.
Are
No.
they're not going to be home, first of all, to receive these things. And then when they're home, are they going to unwrap it and photograph it and make sure there's no damages and have the trucker waiting there like it's a receiving warehouse? No, they're not. So
Right.
I literally, just the minute we started recording, got a message from one of my designers. Her client wants to receive stuff. And so we're sending back, correspondence that it's not advised.
Not advised. Yeah. I believe
Yeah.
that.
No.
Yeah.
That's work. That's a lot of work.
It's a lot
It's
of
a
work.
whole lot of work. I had a client ask me about a rug. I'm like, have you ever received a rug? Do you know how dirty those things are?
Right.
They're filthy. You do not want to get a rug in your home and have to unwrap it yourself.
Yeah.
That's a nightmare. Yeah.
That's
No.
too funny.
What do you think the best practice are for maintaining a project budget? And I'm talking like the full budget too, not just, this is what it's going to cost, this is what I'm charging and this is, but like even managing so that they're making a total profit, like even for their whole business. Maybe they have a team, maybe they have, an office space. What are their best practices for maintaining a budget so that they ensure that they're making profits?
Right. So you're talking about obviously knowing what your operating expenses are monthly,
Right.
right? And how much that is. And then on a project basis, from the beginning, understanding the client's budget and doing perhaps a high-low budget, so they know sort of what the spread could be. And then at different points in the project, taking those numbers and seeing, obviously you have to see where you are. You always need to be within a certain you know, within a certain place. And then, you know, if you're lucky enough and they found things that they love, they'll have the extra funds to get some, you know, all the accessories that they want. But you know, the software, when I'm in the software that I use, I mean, most of my designers do a standard markup on their projects. So you know where you stand, where, you know, again, the design, if there's a designer net like we discussed, then you're making more. But at least you know you have a baseline where you start out and where, you know, where you end up.
Yeah, yeah. We're actually going to be doing also a talk at High Point Market with a group of people about logistics and procurement. And I know that Owen from All Mine is going to have some like tips on how designers can negotiate with receiver houses, because he does that a lot. I mean, because he's worked for Restoration Hardware and done a lot of furniture logistics for a long time. And like, just sometimes looking at the contract and you're rereading the contract for the receiving house, and there are protections that you can put in there, and you can negotiate with them on pricing. And a lot of designers don't necessarily, I mean, they do the best they can, but it's hard to negotiate on that level. It's usually about finding the right receiver, which is always,
well, you know, there's the ones that print,
whole...
there's the ones that print money that we know of, and then there's the regular guys. And so we use all of them at, you know, at different levels. And there's certain things and certain projects that, you know, you want those super white glove movers to do this, and you don't want anything to happen. Maybe you have a lot of antiques, whatever it may be.
Right.
So that's one thing. But I had a situation where my designer did a project in Miami. So we had to find a new receiver that we, you know, and then whenever one of my designers needs something, I say to the other ones, hey, you know, or I just look in the software to see who we used for these projects so we can share. And they're always happy to share. You know, I'll text them and they're happy to give their wallpaper hanger and this, you know, all that stuff. So everybody likes to share, which I love. But so in this, with what happened with this mover, she actually had used him, I think, years ago. And then he came up in this new, you know, selection of warehouses that we were going to use. So we got their contract, which broke down how they billed. And they had their, you know, receiving, you know, per item receiving, and per item for storage, which is standard, right? And then we got the bill, and they had, oh, I'm sorry, they also had a per item for installation, which normally they do it they don't do it per item. And we were like, okay. But you know what? At the end of the day, you know, when I did the math, it was a great deal, right? I was like, this is perfect. Okay, sure. We get the invoice, and they not only charged us per item, but they also charged for moving services.
Oh my!
It was the most it was a whole thing. The guy, I don't give up on stuff like this. He wound up having to shave almost, I think it was like $8,000 off the budget, because I broke it down and I said, you can choose one or the other. And I said, you could do it this way, which is what you told us in your contract, how you would bill, or you could do it this way. You cannot do it both ways.
No.
Figure it out. And so this guy was telling my designer, you know, Heather's telling me how to run my business. I'm telling you what you gave us, and I'm just reiterating that. And we're not paying you all of this extra money. I mean, how do you charge a client that much money for a 2-bedroom apartment in Miami? You don't. I mean, it was crazy. So he wound up taking it off, because he really, there was no way he was getting away with this.
Yeah.
And I certainly wasn't going to let him, but you know,
I just can't think about, like, that designer must like have like want to take you out to dinner that night, because
we were honestly, we
kind of have that conversation just to not have that conversation.
She
you
was,
know?
the two of us were both involved because I had spoken to him and then she had spoken to him and then I spoke to him again. And so we, we went from being upset about it to laughing about it because it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. But,
Yeah. But you
you
won in
have
the
to,
end too, which is such a relief because, and that's what you're doing is also protecting
yeah,
businesses so that they can make a profit, because sometimes you're right, the confidence isn't there and they might have gotten that bill and been like, oh my God, how am I going to present that to the client? And then just eaten some of it just so
but
that
I think sometimes people they sort of look at the big picture when it comes to things like this, where I'm breaking it down. I broke it down per line item, right? I'm looking at how much this actually was supposed to cost based on what he told us. And that's the other thing. People have to read things. This goes for clients reading their contracts of how designers work, and it goes for designers reading contracts of things like these movers who think they can just charge whatever they want.
Yeah, I'm a
You
big
know,
fan of designers sitting down and having a contract meeting
I
and
am too.
go over the contract and what the contract, even says and what it means so that they understand it. Because I get so many questions that I'm like, this should just be in your contract and you should just go over that in the beginning so that you don't have to worry about being shopped.
Mm-hmm.
That's a simple
Right.
one. Like to be shopped.
Yeah.
First of all, and I want you to hear this too out there because I know a lot of people in retail and I have a lot of conversations with brands all the time. And I can tell you that some of the things that you get online from big online retailers are not, first of all, they're not the custom pieces that you're going to design, Niall. Like you're going to know how the fabric
It's not the
needs to be
same.
laid. You know which, foot you're going to put on that sofa and how the arms are going to go. I mean, it might not be custom, but it might be semi-custom,
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
going to know how to work that so that you're giving the best product. The people who get the box, online retailers, whatever, they're getting whatever, kind of whatever's left over, right? They're getting whatever was shipped that month, manufactured that month. They're not necessarily getting any customization, sure, but worse than that, maybe like this one we didn't have enough fabric or the fabric's a little wonky or something because there's no approval in that process. So no one,
Or it's customized the other way. It's
yeah,
customized. I mean, I've had those conversations. I remember being like, I don't know if it was Four Hands or some other vendor, and I said, my client saw the same dresser in West Elm, and it was like, I don't know, $1,500 cheaper. And they said, yeah, that's because they bought so much. We value engineered it, and
right.
we were able to produce it where it's. And I've
Lower
been on a
cost
cruise
wood
ship.
or whatever,
Yeah, and
and
this is from worlds
you're
away, and I
getting
go to
what you
pull the
pay
drawer out,
for, really,
and
but
it's false. Yep,
yeah,
yep,
it's not
yep.
true. Just what you see online doesn't necessarily mean it's the exact same product, even if it looks like the exact same product,
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to what Heather said, in the beginning, sort of having that conversation, when the client says, but I can find it cheaper, sort of including that, you're
Well,
getting
you
a
can find it more
value.
expensive as well. And
Yeah,
the
yeah,
same
yeah.
thing, like, do you want me spending 100 hours finding every line item the cheapest, or do you want me to
Yeah,
spend that 100 hours designing your perfect house? Like,
Right.
yeah,
you have those conversations in the beginning and maybe even a little back and forth debate so that the client kind of gets it and they
yeah.
don't even bring that to your attention later on because it's like,
Nip it in the bud.
nip it
Yeah.
in the bud. Why not? Why? I find, boundaries are good for all people. Like we all need clear boundaries. We all exist better where knowing the rules of how things are done. And for a lot of clients, they don't work with interior designers every day,
No.
and so what they end up thinking is, that designers are trying to rip them off. You're just marking the price. And it's
They're
like they
not
have no
looking at
idea
the
the
value.
cost. Yeah, they
Yeah,
don't.
they're
That's
not looking at the
that's
value that designers actually bring
Yeah.
to
that's
the
it.
table. It's like that quote, you don't get paid for the hour, you get paid for the value you bring to the hour. And
Hmm.
I think that's the biggest problem. And I think that designers need to be able to express that to clients in some way in the beginning. And that's why you're hiring a designer, right? I mean, at the end of the day, yes, you're spending money, but the value you get, I mean, it doesn't compare,
Right.
And so when people say they can shop for things, okay, then don't use a designer.
Right.
Done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I can shop for things too. Just go on.
Right.
You know, anybody can shop for things. The problem is, what are you going to get, and how are you going to do? What are you going to do with it? You know, because
Well, that's like
no.
also wasn't that on one of the things, I can't remember exactly what you posted, but it was something I believe about someone, maybe it wasn't you, I apologize, but there was some post somewhere about, you know, and this happens all the time where these designers are somehow giving work before they're getting paid. So,
Oh, yeah.
that's the other thing. Obviously, you have to stay ahead of the money with every single thing. And that includes your design work, not just
Yeah,
merchandise. You must be paid. So you're
yeah.
either getting your flat fee up front, or you're getting some sort of retainer if someone decides they're going to take your ideas and run. And then, then you have that issue. So, I
That's a
would
real
say
thing.
it is a real thing,
It
and it's
is.
And I don't know where it comes
disgusting.
from. I don't know
It's
where it comes from.
it's so
I think it's
terrible.
not great confidence, and I think it's wanting the job more than wanting those boundaries. And we can all be in that like scarcity mindset that we're, you know, especially young designers, don't have a portfolio they're proud of. Like, you know,
That's what they want.
they want that. So they're
Yeah,
willing to do anything to get there sometimes.
agree.
We got questions, by the way, from some of the members. One person asked, how can designers plan for their taxes to ensure that they're compliant with tax regulations? What are any tips on that?
So, I mean, as far as when it comes, are you talking about sales tax or their
I think
estimated
they're federal tax. I
the
think
federal
that's what she
tax?
was talking about.
So I mean, I work with, I work directly with everyone's accountants. So, I will be sending reports every quarter because they're paying estimated taxes. So, you know, instead of doing it on a yearly basis, obviously do it on a quarterly basis so you know where you stand, and then you don't have this huge bill at the end of the year. But that's as far as taxes go. I mean, the accountants handle that, but they should be giving you a good idea of where you stand as the year progresses.
Yeah, yeah. So making sure you're doing that. How should designers approach paying subcontractors or employees from for financials perspective? Do you think that designers make any mistakes on that front?
Yeah, I think that there are designers. I mean, I personally get paid on 1099s.
Yeah,
So, I mean, in whenever we start using a subcontractor for something, I find out if I mean, you can see it on their letterhead or, however, whatever information we know, if it's an LLC, if, if they're incorporated. Hang on, sorry, I'm getting okay. So I always find out whether or not that we need to send them a 1099. In the software that I use, there's a place when you enter a vendor in where you can check off the 1099 box and enter in. And that's the thing, you want to get their social security number or their EIN number before you start paying them. Because I've a million times had to chase people down when we realized when they were done working, that we actually need to send them a 1099.
right.
So that's, an important thing to ask when you start working with a wallpaper hanger or whoever it is, are you a company or are you a person?
Yes, yes. I love that. I love that. How can I improve my financial forecasting and planning? This is the person said.
Say that one more time.
How can they do better on financial forecasting?
I mean, I
That's
think
kind of broad. I mean,
it is broad, but
that's really broad.
again, it goes back to be very clear on what your operating expenses are for the month. If you need to break them down even further, then break them down by the week.
Yeah.
However, again, whatever works for you
And what
to,
you need too. What do you need to be making for your own
correct.
life to run your
Yes.
life? Like sometimes I have a designer that actually years and years ago, this was Sarah from Mydoma. She'll tell you this is what she did was she ran it all the numbers backward. She knew how much she needed to make to pay her bills, whatever. And so she would charge for projects based on the finances so that she knew what money she needed to make. So
Yeah.
this needs to make this, so I have to charge this. And she just didn't, hard line it because she knew that that's what she needed to make. So it was
Right.
okay to just say, that's it. Like, I'm not going to go back and forth on that.
I mean, for my own personal expenses at home, I have a spreadsheet that lists every auto pay that comes out in the month, and I do it in order. So I know, and I break it down. So I just sort of know mentally. I always know if I want to glance at it. Oh, I know what's coming out this week. It's nice to be able to see that and to know exactly how much, and you should do that personally and for your business.
Yeah.
You
Now,
should
do
know what's
you
coming out
have
when.
any designers that are working with you that you think have a really great knack on increasing their profit margin? Are they like, and do you share that information like with other designers? Like, hey, maybe, you should increase your prices this incrementally per year. Like we've been dealing with major inflation, and a lot of designers haven't been able to recoup that by increasing their fee prices.
Yeah, I think it's probably, at this point, so 30% is probably the standard markup if you're doing it on straight net,
Right.
right? And then, a lot of my designers charge 10% on not every single one, most of them charge 10% on reimbursables, and a lot goes into reimbursables. You should charge 10%. And I feel like it's one of those contract things that clients go, oh, 10%, it's fine. It's like
Right.
they sort of gloss over it, which is nice because there are a lot of reimbursables, but you can get a nice little chunk out of that. And again, you do spend time. I spent a lot of time entering in miscellaneous expenses and things like that. And then, designers and design assistants are all tracking, freight and all of that. So yeah, there's obviously the markup, which is part of, it's part of procurement, but it's a bit of an extra, piece of your income that you charge freight on everything. You get 10% on everything. It
Yeah.
adds up.
And this is the last question I'm gonna ask from the members that I think is, I get this one all the time, actually. They wanted to know how they should bill for travel expenses, like when they're asked to be asked to travel out of town, or if they have to take a plane ticket, or if they have to.
Why would they think that the client would not pay for that if they're going to their home? Why is that even a question?
They ask me, I say the same thing, but they ask this question over and over again about travel expense. I get this question at least once a month.
I mean, if their client was traveling to their client, would they not expect their client not to pay it? No,
Right,
they wouldn't.
right.
So, they're coming, it's part of, and that should be in your contract about, it should be broken down. Not only will you be paying for, an economy plane ticket, but, you're obviously not going to go first class. And if you want to, you can pay that yourself. It would be nice. There are some lovely clients who do pay for that because they want to, but you have to be fair. Again, you have to say an economy plane ticket, and then it's just like the freight charges. Those are expenses. I get a plane, if I see a plane ticket, and obviously I know which client it's for, what installations happened or site visits, that is going in as a regular expense plus 10%.
Plus the hotel fee, plus the per diem.
They're paying for that.
Like
One of my
business
designers
trip.
who travels a lot, she'll oftentimes turn those into trips with her husband. So she'll give me, the hotel bill and put a line through it and say, don't charge them for this. This was for this time. This was for our time, things like that, because they're fair. They're not the clients are not asking for the hotel bill all the time, but they're fair and they're not going to charge them for what they shouldn't be, you know?
Yeah. Well, the next thing that I thought would be fun to talk about, and I know this is a little bit more cringe, is the personal finances of designers. It's just something I'm kind of passionate about. I've been talking to designers more about their own personal finances and, organizing, just having that confidence to make sure you are including in the amount of money that you are earning fair expenses that you need to pay for your own benefits. Like, so a 401k. If you need, dental and health insurance to become out of your business, if you need, there's a lot of expenses that are personal, benefits that I think sometimes designers just blow that off because it's an extra
Yeah.
expense, and I'll deal with it later, especially when you're talking a young designer who's just starting out and they're just struggling to start a business and they're worried about every little liability and mistake. It's the idea of a 401k is like, or an investment account, or having health and dental and vision. You know, like sometimes they
I
just
think
don't
they
do
should,
it.
yeah, I think they should start and open that immediately so that it's just part of the process of, the things you're paying. You're paying rent, you're also putting money into your investment account. You should do all of that and you should start it immediately. I have a new designer actually who started her business last year and months in started an investment account and started putting money into that. And
Good.
that's fantastic. I mean, everyone should do that. I think, instead of looking at it like this huge chunk, put a tiny bit in there,
Yeah.
just a tiny bit,
Like
even if
5%,
it's just
6%, whatever you can,
whatever you can afford, or
can
just
afford.
just make the promise to yourself that it'll be something, and it doesn't have to be a huge amount, because
Right.
at the end of the day, something's
Well,
better
you're
than
going to
nothing.
get to like my age and go, oh my gosh, I don't have anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and that there are designers who privately tell me that,
Yeah.
that they don't have anything in their
But
retirement.
you know what? I think it's also when you don't have a handle on your finances, you don't know how much you can put into that. So again, having that breakdown, like I said, a spreadsheet, this is how much money I need every month to run my business. And part of that is my investment account, put that into your expenses. And then I think it's just a lot easier to do it that way. And
And make sure you have your insurance, you have dental, you have vision, the things that you need for yourself, to whether
right.
you're getting it, through a husband's plan, or, you're getting it through yourself. You need to make sure you're taking care of yourself,
Yeah,
that,
100%.
and your business has to be financially able to pay for those things, or you should maybe work for someone else.
Well, the other thing is, coming up with, the big mystery of all, projects is figuring out what the design fee is going to be. So, I think I was not a fan of the hourly model, because I feel like it takes so many hours to figure out what your hours are. But if you're disciplined, and one of my designers is constantly talking into her phone and putting it in her notes, and those go to her assistant and she puts them in, and and then we bill them every month. And it's a moneymaker. And so you if clients can agree to that, but she does get a retainer up front, because you have to have, again, if you're billing hourly, you have that, what we were just discussing before, someone sort of running with your ideas. But again, it's, if you're always ahead of it, and you do have a retainer, and we'll apply it to the last bill, or we will return it at the end, whatever it is, as long as you have some funds. When it comes to people stealing your ideas and doing that, obviously the flat fee method is better, because they have to pay for your expertise up front. That's what that's for. So I'm a fan of that. So it kind of goes both ways. I think you can make more money sometimes if you're, with hourly, but you're also running the risk of being in a place and not, she, again, the one that I'm talking about, we never have this issue. And thankfully, most clients are great, but there's always going to be this kind of situation. I think more so with, newer designers. That's why newer designers should really be charging flat fees. Once once you get into it, then then people want to pay you even bigger flat fees.
I can't believe that is just saying that alone. Niall, are you kind of blown away? Because almost every design that works opposite. Almost every designer starts hourly, and it doesn't feel like they can charge flat fee until they get to a certain point in their career. So,
Which by the way,
that's
and I
great
agree
advice.
with this, but
Yeah.
I agree with this. The thing about hourly is that you have to be able to track your hours to know how long things take, so that you can figure out what makes sense with your flat fee.
Right.
Right? It's like a double-edged sword. No matter what you do, it kind of feels like that. But I think that you have to know who your clients are. You have to know how you work. You have to know, and at the end of the day, it's all optics. It's all optics. The way that people see things on paper it could be this exact same price written in a different way or in a different format, and they'll say yes to one and no to the other. So it's like a mind game when it comes to this. You want to get paid and you want to get your worth, but sometimes you just have to figure out how you're going to do that with your clients, because it could be really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say, set those parameters of that flat fee too, so that if, scope creep happens, you have an hourly on top of that. For
My
things that
designers
happen
all
above.
have, yeah, for sure. My designers all have a number. Say it's, you get 3 schemes per room, and then that falls under your design fee. Once that's up, then we will be charging hourly for any work beyond that. And the
Right.
other thing is also having an expiration date on your contract, so that, this is not lasting more than a year. I mean, everyone has had those doom projects where they never end and something happens. I mean, 2 years later, and these designers are dying.
Yeah.
They're like, I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
cannot wait to be
They just
finished
want to get
already.
out. They're like, let me go.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now there's like a little something that you're thinking about doing too, right? So
Yes, my partner and I, we started a consulting firm. We both have over 20 years in the industry. We perform an in-depth analysis of financial and operational processes, for design firms, and then develop tailored plans for each client to, achieve and maintain optimal health.
I love it.
So
I love it.
yeah, that's
I
what
love
we're
it. And
doing.
you're such a great resource in the community. I appreciate you so much. You're always there answering questions from the designers or giving a great perspective. And we really
I'm happy to do it.
appreciate it.
I want everyone to be successful. And I always say, my designers, if any designers called them, I mean, for new designers out there, call people that you think could be mentors to you. Just say, hey, could I have 10 minutes of your time or 15 minutes of your time? Email them, whatever. And I know all of my designers would be happy to do that and share. And, everyone wants that when they begin. And so they're happy to give it to designers when it's there, once they are in the position to give it.
Yeah. And someone like you too, who can give, that sometimes that bird's eye view of multiple firms and how multiple firms run can give them an idea of what makes sense for themselves. Because there's so many of them. So it's like, instead of talking to 10 different designers to find out what makes sense for yourself, maybe talking to someone like you who could give them an overview of like, you could run it this way, or you could run it this way, or you could run it this way. And, if you do it this way, these are the things you need to watch out for. If you do it this way, these are the things.
Yeah.
Because
I've answered, I've said before, people will reach out to me and ask some questions. Again, I don't have all day to answer questions, but I'm happy,
Sure.
I'm happy to help where I can. And, and I'll always be like that, because I know how many people truly just need the help and want to start a successful business, and they just don't know how, and they're not knowledgeable. And a lot of people are working on their own. And even if they worked for a larger firm before, they weren't on the back end where, all of the, contract stuff was happening and where the billing is happening. They'll see maybe, okay, we're buying, something for this price and we're selling it for, this much more, but that's sort of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Now, do you have any questions?
No. I've been taking all these notes.
You should taking notes.
Thank you both.
I love it.
This has been great. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And we'll get this episode out soon so that everyone can get such great financial advice.
Perfect. Take care.
Awesome.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much.